podcast, Roberto Maranca, former Chief Data Officer at Lloyds Banking Group, talks about data leadership through GDPR and privacy. So stay tuned. Welcome everyone to Future of Data podcast. Today we have with us Roberto Maranca. He is a former Chief Data Officer at Lloyds Banking Group, and a brief bio with almost 25 years of experience in the world of IT and data. Roberto has spent most of its working life with General Electric in the Capital Division, where since 2014, as Chief Data Officer of their international unit, he has been overlooking and the implementation of the data governance and quality framework, spanning from supporting risk model validations to enabling divestitures and leading their more recent Basel III data initiatives. For the last year, he has held the role of Chief Data Officer at Lloyds Banking Group, shaping, implementing the new data strategy and dividing the time between BCBS 239 and GDPR programs. Roberto has got master's degree in aeronautical engineering from Federico to Naples University. With that, Roberto, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Vishal. Pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. So I think as a start, why don't we go over your journey? So if you can walk us through what brought you to here and your background, that will really help us understand where you're coming from.
Look, data has been kind of the leitmotif of my last probably 10, 15 years, but in reality, it's always been there, right? Because since I've been starting in my IT career, there was this data thing. There was, in the past, it was always seen as part and parcel of the IT world, but more recently came to be something different. And for me, there are two key moments I can give you in which I realized that something was different, and I want to do something different from just being an IT guy. I love to be an IT guy. I had to recycle myself from an engineer to an IT guy because there was some little jobs going on at the time I came out of university. But I came out of university with an essay on optimization. So my thesis was optimizing the weight of a structure, an airframe, because I'm an aeronautics. So you have imagine an airframe, and I was using an algorithm that was called descending gradient algorithm, which is in data science is kind of a one-on-one of your minimizing your error function. So data science has been there for a while. Just that's an incidental. But in my career in GE, there are, as I was saying, two moments. One is Basel. Basel for banks has been a big exercise, and I was in 2006 helping my risk director to implement Basel across Europe. And for me, going around and we were having a tool, and the ambition, like every time in GE, the ambition is to centralize, standardize, make it cheaper, faster, better. And so the idea was to go all around the different banks in Europe and get their data, put this data in the tool, and having the tool producing the Basel reports. For the ones that don't know, Basel is pretty hungry exercise in terms of data, because the idea is that you tell me how you look like from a product and customer point of view, and I will tell you, there would be a formula that will tell you how much capital you need to hold from a regulatory point of view. That's in Basel in 15 words. Of course, it's more complex than that. But the reality is that you need really to ingest a lot of data to produce that number. And for me, at that moment, was the first moment in my life at work in which I realized the importance of, eliciting requirements. Because when I was going around and mapping, so basically I was asking people to tell me where this thing I was searching was in their environment. And it was incredibly critical to find the real expert with the capital E, because you would have known that the mapping you'd done wasn't the right one probably 6 months after, when you were starting to churn the first data, and you will have then to go back and fix. And data quality became of paramount importance, because you can give me the right thing, but if the right thing is a column of something that is 50% complete, I can't produce the number anyway. So all these things, Basel was really my baptism of fire in terms of data. But after that, I became the BI leader for GE Capital EMEA. So I was sitting at the center in a little HQ, and we were doing dashboards. We were producing reports. We were producing things that people in the business will use for making decisions. And we were working night and day to create these fantastic things. And a lot of these fantastic things were going all the way down to 99% completion and about to be rolled out. But then the business was coming in and saying, "Oh, but this is wrong." And so we were looking at each other and said, "Okay, so what do you want me to do?" The one critical, I still remember one, probably almost costed me my job. And was this mega super dashboard we're doing, and in which a person from a business in France couldn't agree with the person from a business in UK, the definition of the thing that was supposed to land into the dashboard. And we've been ping-ponging between these two people for 4 months, while my boss was shouting at me and said, why this bloody thing is not live yet? Because I couldn't find a referee of the definition. So when a few years below, let's say, downstream, I saw the job description of what GE was trying to put in place, because we were supposed to be regulated by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is pretty high on data. After the crisis in 2008, they spent hundreds of millions to create a very, very comprehensive data environment, because my belief is that nobody wants to sit in front of the next president and say, "Sorry, I didn't see this one coming either." Right? So the idea is, through the data, I will predict the future, or at least I will have a margin of an understanding in terms of time that something is going wrong. So the amount of data you need to provide the Federal Reserve if you are a bank is a lot. So when G put together these data jobs, and these first data jobs landed in front of my eyes, all those boxes I was having open in my head through the Basel exercise, my BI exercise, previous experiences in IT, all those boxes were ticked. So I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a chief data officer. And but I knew also that, because of the experience as a BI leader, that the chief data officer cannot be an IT person. In the majority of business, not everywhere. In some businesses, you can be a data person within IT, but in majority of businesses, the way IT has been dealing with business is actually seen as something different, something that is the custodian of data rather than the fixer and the implementer or the definer of data. So I knew that I had to do this from a business point of view. So I left IT and I started my career in data, which is something in between. So that's where I come from.
Interesting. And thank you so much, Roberto, for walking me through that. So I think one thing that I find really fascinating about your background, and I think whenever I read international and data governance in the same sort of description, the whole sort of Pandora box of issues opens up, right? So, and you're talking about this negotiation between, in your use case, where two sort of countries are not negotiating or not coming to accord on what's the legal definition of an entity, right? How do you console these sort of things? Like, what are some of the best practices you could share as a data steward or as a data leader, that if you are running a transnational company which has sort of like each sort of their own government peripheries and sort of their regulations, and then you talk about something like Basel, where you have to be really data savvy and understanding each and every grain of interaction to actually, with some comfort, suggest something. So what are some of the things you could share? We'll resume after a short break. This part of the podcast is brought to you by First Friday Fair, fastest AI-powered way to find your next opportunity. Check out the website firstfridayfair.tao.ai and find your next dream job. Let's get back to the podcast.
Okay, so let's start from the typical discussion: federation and centralization, right? So, I mean, people will come into a job and say, "Oh, we need to centralize everything. Oh, we need to." Unfortunately, most of our companies, even if they're in the same country, are heavily federated, and the federation is due to a natural human habit of, I want to know and I want to control what is the environment that is supposed to deliver my goals, right? So I want to have an understanding, and I create an environment that is actually a reflection of my personality, or my character, my habits. So naturally, you will create tribes. Now, these tribes are there, and it's been like that since the beginning of times. And in a normal corporation world, and the tribes are the silos or are the markets. So they are culturally centric pieces of subset of the organization that have in their own culture, their own traditions, their own things. And I'm not by chance making an association between the culture of people and the dynamic of a corporation, because the main thing you have in common in a culture, what is it? Language, right? And data is the language we use. So if you want to have a common language, you need to achieve a common culture. And everything starts with the meaning of things. Because as I was saying before, my spark in my head of mapping was, I go around asking the simple question, tell me where this is. And someone will answer, this is it. It's there. And it's in this form, and it's in this status, and it's in this quality. So, but understanding data is simply understanding who you are as a company from a data point of view. And understanding who you are means that you have to define things. You have to go around and name things, right? So when you try to when you look at centralization, federation, I mean, unfortunately, there are things that are, beyond the realm of your, let's say, is in the fringe of the things you can influence. You can't just be, as a CDO, you can't decide that, from tomorrow, we're not going to have markets anymore. We're going to have one data lake for everyone. Everyone will swim in the data lake. That's impossible. Right? So and the impossibility of this will creates the fact that data is still a craft. It's an artisan kind of thing, because I have to create a bespoke kind of suit for wherever I go. I can't just go with okay, this is the template, and you apply the template. You can apply methodologies, you can apply, paradigms, but the reality, you have to create something that works for the company in which you are. And every company is different today. So closing the loop, my experience as a steward is, first, don't focus too much on centralizing the data. Focus on centralizing the knowledge about the data. That's the most important thing. And GDPR and we're going to discuss later about GDPR, but GDPR was the one of the key moments in which I realized that if you have knowledge of where the data is at any point in time, at any point in space, who's owning it, where it goes, you win whatever regulatory challenge on earth. Because find me a regulation that doesn't ask you for data. So if you stay on that one, so the experience is that you need to create a sort of a virtuous circle of data. In your companies, there are myriad of consumers of data and providers of data. There are myriad of it. And today, they are very much in a one-to-one or a many-to-many relationship. So one consumer will ask many providers, and one provider will probably provide to many consumers, right? That's the web of things we have. And we can put our hands in the sand and thinking it's not there, but it is there. And today, what you want to do is to remove the subjectivity of what is asked and what is provided. That's what is killing us. If someone comes and asks for this, but this is not exactly the this someone else asked, and is asked in the same way, and the provider is providing it to two different people with two different requirements, thinking it's the same thing, but it's not. That's the mother of all problems. I mean, 99% of the problems we're having is in the ambiguity of meanings. So what you need to do is to create a third pole, which is what people will call stewards, sponsors, owners, call it what you want. But there is someone that is interjecting this flow of data between provider and consumer, and is making that a standard requirement. So what you want, Mr. Consumer, you want this is called customer name, right? And it's got as long maximum 50 characters, and is using, whatever ASCII table, and you can use all special color, all you can scroll down all the and enunciate all the rules that the consumer want that. Well, the owner, the steward, or the sponsor is there responsible to say, no, this company wants to define that thing you're asking to Mr. Provider this way, and this is the way we do it across all the company. That's how you create the circle of data in which there is a requirement that goes into the provider or into the sponsor or owner, is actually cleansed and is added on standards and goes back to the provider, and the provider is providing data according to those standards. It's difficult, but the way I see it, in my experience, there is no real big alternatives, because either you live with a many-to-many relationship between provider and consumer, you will never know if you're answering and if you're asking and answering questions in the way the enterprise wants, or I don't know what else to do. So that's the experience in creating the right environment for managing data. And of course, between consumers, you can put all the scientists in the world. There are consumers who they want things. And most of these guys are actually self-producers, because they go and find things by themselves, and they do whatever they want with it.
Right.
And I believe that one of the issues we find in scaling data science projects is that we've been experimenting too much, but then we smash our head in front of the wall of, I can't scale this, because now what I found as an answer is not valid in the bigger world of my enterprise. It's only valid in my little sandbox, because I didn't align the meanings.
Interesting.
Makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think, and thank you so much for walking us through. I think that's really useful. And other thing that I find fascinating about your background, I think this is the first, you're one of the first guests that we have who is from Europe, and just after the GDPR thing happened, and you have a stake in that. So why don't you walk us through?
Just want to say that on the 25th of May, I was actually, I'm out of job now. I was sailing, right? So it wasn't my worry.
No, but yes, you have been through sort of
I've been through, yes.
So
absolutely.
That was, I think that was fascinating. So why don't you walk us through that journey? Like how, as a data sort of executive, you decipher something like GDPR and sort of connect and comply your organization to it? Like, what are some of the mindset that goes into it?
Well, I think I had the luxury to having gone through SOX, and for people in US, SOX will be very, very familiar. And I think SOX was a train we missed, regulators and practitioners, in being better at data. We missed it. Because if we'd done SOX properly, GDPR would have been a breezier. Because all the controls and all the stuff that you need are already there. I mean, privacy by design in SOX is the SOX impact analysis. Right? But SOX has been focusing too much on processes and not enough on data. Right? Because the idea or the assumption was, if I have the right process, it will deliver the right data. Right? So in theory, it's like having a pipe, and I don't care what goes into the pipe, as long as the pipe is not leaking. I know the same quantity of things will go in from here and there. So the number I provide to my, shareholders and the public would be good. Well, but I had the luxury to go through that, and I had the luxury of forging my mind in the deeper recesses of doing SOX day in, day out, which was a pain. And SOX was something you had to do on top of the other things. And then one day I realized that, hang on a second, why don't we make SOX part of what we do every day? So we have a control framework. Why don't we just map the controls that we have in our framework to the SOX controls? So when we do this thing every day, at the end of our cycle, we just had to pick the controls, access control. We were doing access control anyway. Why do you want to do access control for SOX specifically? Right? So that was the thing that allowed me to go into the GDPR with a different optics. Because for me, GDPR was already, this is important, and actually it's been around for 20 years already. I mean, the essence of it, and the first data privacy regulation is 1994. So the first book that was talking about the impact of privacy of automated processing, and it was written by a guy that was managing the privacy entity in Italy in 1993. So, I mean, this is not new again. It's just we've been believing and approaching this in a regulatory way. And the regulatory way is that I do my business and I solve my problems, and then I do regulation. Reality is the people in the business, in the industry that approach GDPR the right way, they've been doing GDPR while they were doing their business. So they've been adapting the business processes in a way that you manage to achieve compliance by outcome. Are you still with me?
Yeah, interesting.
So GDPR is, I always said, after the 25th of May, GDPR will stop to be general data privacy regulation and will become good data produces revenue. Because that's now the way of doing business is the way in which you respect the data you are a custodian of, and you can provide access, you can provide transparency of what you do. It's now a condition to do business, and the sooner you people understand, the better, because that will allow people to realize that maturity in the way I do data allows me also to answer regulatory questions in a much cost-efficient way.
Interesting.
So I build that in my change agenda. In my change agenda, I have to understand what comes in terms of regulation, and I need to decode my regulation in terms of capabilities I need to embed in my change agenda. So I'm not going to build at the end in a heist because the regulation is about to arrive in 3 months, something that is a monster and I will need to feed till I die, right? It's something that will change my business. And then the motto in G was, we do this not because of a regulator, but because we want to be a better business. And good data is a good business, is good business practice. So
interesting. And what's your take on its impact? Like what do you like from, because you have been through it? So what are some of your thoughts on what GDPR is trying to achieve? How would they achieve it, and what's your take on that?
Well, let's say GDPR is a reminder and is the last train in a way, right? You can't miss this one because GDPR is just telling you, all those good things you should have done in the last 10 years. Well, you know what? You should have. I mean, good data quality, yeah, it's important because it will impair any DSARs, any data subject access request you're going to do. Because if your customer base is not good, and a customer comes to you and say, can you tell me all the data you have about me? And the email that you have on record is the wrong one, you actually have an immediate breach because you're going to send something to someone that is not the customer asking. So record retention is now paramount. We were possibly in the past, we were teasing the people who were appointed as record retention leaders of project because that was a little bit like, being appointed as a strategic project. It was like the end of your career becoming the record manager. I mean, I have absolute respect for all the record managers in the world. But reality is that GDPR now is kind of the fairy godmother that kissed Cinderella record manager, and Cinderella record manager has become a fantastic princess, which is going to save you if you do it properly. If you don't do it properly, it will actually destroy you. So the impact is back to basics. So there are some fundamentals that in data that are absolutely the fundamentals, and GDPR is reminding you that metadata is absolutely important because, as I was saying before, if you know where your data is at any point in time, who's using it, under what circumstances, what standard, you are on a winner. Access control is the 101 of creating a good security environment. And you combine that with metadata, so you don't only know what data where, but you know who's accessing data, right? And data classification is incredibly important because combined with the other three, you know that someone has got access to that data because that data is classified in a way that is entitled to have access to that. Right? And classification will drive record retention. So the fundamentals have always been there. We always knew that. We've been a little bit reluctant to bite the bullet and say, you know what, we really need to do this right. And that's the impact. The impact is just, we need to do this right now. And there will be some patience from the regulators, but I think patience will run very thin, very fast. If the regulator realize that this is another attempt to comply with the regulation with a ticking the box exercise. This is a change of lifestyle. If people didn't understand it yet, they need to.
Interesting. And I think one thing that I've captured from some of the friends in US, their chief data officers, and their perspective is they're thanking GDPR in some way. So they're saying, now my IT guy at least pick my phone call. Now they comply with my request of hey, where and what is happening where, and they're sort of just saying, okay, I'll help you because you will be the guy probably that help us through this kiosk. What has been sort of your observation? Is that true that as a data steward, like it is, GDPR actually is helping you in as you said, creating a knowledge archive of where the data sources and what is happening, so that you have a better understanding, or the company has a better understanding of their data. What's your take on that?
It's a big self-awareness wake-up call. So I was mentioning before that data, I believe in what Socrates was saying, yes, and Socrates was saying, know thyself. Right? That's important, because people that want to be data-driven, right? And why they want to be data-driven? Because data will allow you precision and optimization of resources in what you do, right? Because if I'm data-driven, I can target my strategy to the millimeter and not wasting money and achieve the outcome. But the starting point of that is knowing where you are. So if you don't know where you are from a data point of view, you don't know your posture, you don't know if you are standing on a nice playing field or if you're one step from the brink. So that GDPR is simply telling you, you need to be aware of who you are from a customer data point of view, but I will stretch it to say all the important data you have in the company, and there is a lot more than customer data in the company is important. And once you are aware of that, it's a big, leap, and then people realize that the force multiplier you obtain in achieving things faster and better, doing that, is invaluable. I mean, can you imagine, what's the first thing you do in a big change program nowadays? What is the first thing you do? It's called the Aziz. So you go and find the Aziz, right? And what is the Aziz? The Aziz, the length of your first phase of a project is the measure of how ignorant you are about who you are from a data point of view. Because the Aziz of a project should be something you go, open your metadata repository, and you say, okay, what do you want to change? This. Okay, this is that. And it's this way. And so you know immediately what you need to do. No, instead, nowadays, you need to send out in your company legions of contractors that will work for 6 months to find out what is it and how you look like. And we'll put that in an Excel and a PowerPoint that on a Visio that will last the time of the project, and it will be then thrown away. So imagine you are complying with GDPR in a wider sense with your data. So your Aziz is not lasting 6 months and employing millions of dollars spent in contractors. It's actually an exercise of checking a repository. How much better and much faster and much more reliable is that?
We'll resume after a short break. This part of the podcast is brought to you by First Friday Fair, fastest AI-powered way to find your next opportunity. Check out the website firstfridayfair.tao.ai and find your next dream job. Let's get back to the podcast. Interesting. So I think, and thank you so much, by the way, walking us through that. So another interesting thing that I've seen. So you are from GE, and GE is very industrial manufacturing, ginormous company, massive to do with IoT. That keyword really impact that company. So now almost even banking is no different. Like they all are using this IoT, sort of lot of IoT interacting with each other and sort of generating a lot of data that we don't have a good way to classify, and then some of them sort of are just sitting somewhere in logs and whatnot. How has GDPR made that life a bit neurotic? Like from your perspective, that if you are a company that deals with a lot of these IoT in infrastructure, how is GDPR?
Yeah, IoT is, and by the way, I think there's plenty of IoT happening in banks, because if
Yeah.
IoT is connecting sensors and devices on the network, and
Mm.
banks have been doing that for a while now.
That's
And
true.
actually, even more interesting part of our Lloyd's is insurance. And in the insurance, there is even a bigger play between the physical world of sensors and the data world of outcome and the delivering of service and insight. So it's a massive thing. And the issue with IoT is an issue of transparency, because I can have the black box, running on my car and collecting all the data about the way I drive, and then there is a little model that decides on the edge to calculate the add-on on my premium because I've been a bit naughty in the last 2 weeks. All right, and that's fine. It's absolutely fine. But I mean, first of all, this kind of a flow data has to be secure, because the way I drive, the places I go, is not something I might be very interested in being, diffused on the internet, right? so I need to trust that. Secondly, I need to trust that although you might want to keep your IP on the way you calculate my premium, because that's IP of a company. You need to be transparent in saying that the feature you're going to decide to pick are this type of feature, right? Because you need to be transparent. And GDPR is explicit about that. So in case there is some adverse outcome in your regards because of some automated decision, you have the right to have a human explain you why. And in not explain you why, meaning this number went into this formula and it became this other number, and I ranked you and I calibrated you, and then that's why you were 0.03. No, it's more like how transparently you can explain to me how this thing works without telling me the cogs and all the bits of an engine. But you need to tell me that if I do this type of behavior, then I might have that type of outcome. And that's why GDPR is probably pushing a little bit, because in the past years of creation of modeling and creation of ever more complex and more feature rich algorithm, probably we're approaching the what do you call it, the singularity, in which the algorithm that writes algorithm and creates this thing that cannot be explained anymore. So a complex system that cannot be explained is something that will go against the trust that people have to have in what you do for providing them a service. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but for me, it's all connected to the fact that now we're going to gather data speed. Gather data at speed is not even so the velocity is exponential, because the more sensor, the more the better the network, the ampler is the set of things you're collecting. You'll find yourself that you're not even drinking from a fire hose. You're sniffing from an afterburner, if I can use a metaphor from my background as investor. So, but you need to remember that at the end of what we do, there's always a consumer of data, a human. Alexa is not able to make a emotional choice. Alexa will not decide which song to play because Alexa will like it. Right? Alexa will do that based on our perceived emotion or feature. So at the end of what we do, there's always a human. And whenever GDPR is trying to put at the center of this, the fact that the human privacy is a right. It's sanctioned by the fundamental Charter of Human Rights in the European community. I'm pretty sure that outside the European community, sooner or later, something similar will emerge after Cambridge Analytica, you bet.
Right.
So, that's Article 8 of the Fundamental Charter. And Article 9, so 2 articles after, you have freedom of speech and freedom of religion. So it's pretty well playing with stuff that is pretty important. So IoT is just creating a more complex system, a more distributed system that we need to be really aware and need to be able to describe and to translate to someone.
Interesting. Interesting. No, I think that's really very relevant, and again, thank you for walking us through that. And actually, I was conversing with someone sort of about the AI and sort of and another area where I see sort of this murky line. So sure, IoT in IoT construct. So the vendor owns some of the data. They know how it's produced, and as a business, I may or may not need everything, but still the sensors are capturing some things, and I need, like, it's a data exhaust problem, right? And on the other side, if you look at AI, so one of the things that I was discussing with one of the executive here locally, as that today there's a shadow IT, right? So IT owns data, IT understands the data silos, if at all, and then you have this shadow group saying, okay, let's do a shadow IT, and even in that shadow now there's a shadow AI. Right, so I have got two business folks. They say, okay, let pick a third box AI and let it flounder around the data and consumer data in my silo and see what comes out of it. Now, the more sort of you go into this shadow IT, you lose a track, you lose some sight on what kind of data is monitored by the company, and getting that holistic picture. Now you're talking about an AI that's again living in its shadow. How would sort of, so that's one side of your business, right? That's sort of going in that direction, and the other side is saying, hey, you should not have data exhaust. You should exactly know where it's like, at least you should have a turbo system or whatever, where you are monitoring all the exhaust and you know what the hell is going on. So what's your take on that? Like, how do you make peace with these shadow IT phenomena and something like consumer privacy initiatives?
Right. So, and here's where the word governance has to come in. But has to come in a different way that has been, treated up until today. Governance up until today has always been the parallel process of people that go in, coming out to that process and have to check something. Oh, I'm doing something, and then I go and tick something. So there is this continuous difference of planes in which things are happening. And that creates the need for people sometimes to, let's say, be more creative, or you want to use more agile because, someone is pushing for results, and there you go, get some money. Don't talk to the IT guys. Don't talk to the data scientists. I have this friend that does this fantastic thing. He's got a tool. Let's bring it in, do a quick POC. And all of a sudden the POC becomes a bit more than a POC. And it becomes, and then the POC is all of a sudden has got a team of 20 on the POC. It's been running for 6 months, and by definition, it's not a POC anymore, but it's a carcinogenic cell. It's something that's actually growing within the organization, absorbing more and more resources, and like shadow IT, eventually will kill it. Right? So that's what happens. It becomes unsustainable because they are outside of a change kind of process. So they are outside of the supply chains. They're outside of anything, outside of governance, because again, governance is on a different plane. And what you have is you are creating something that you can't control anymore, and you can't scale, because all of these things will get to a point in which they can't inflate more than they can, and either they start to cannibalize other parts of the business. If you think about it, it's literally working like cancer. So it's exactly the same mechanism. So how you deal with that? Well, on the shadow IT side, one of the benefits moving from IT into data was I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn where you're running things. You want to do it on Excel, it's fine. You want to do it on AWS, it's fine. I don't care. But going back to the standards and the circle of data, right? If this piece of data is very important for the organization, you might want to, has to, be kept according to certain standard. So you want to keep it on Excel, it's fine. But then if your Excel is becoming all of a sudden a source of data for the organization, then that Excel has to withstand some few hygiene factors. You have to have a disaster recovery. I want to see procedures. You have to have a user access control. You have to have a backup. So all of a sudden you make the choice of Excel unpalatable for people. But that's where, the enforcement of this type of approach is where usually you measure the strength of the commitment from above. Because I can only be as good as the moment in which someone from above, when I go and say, such and such is not, fulfilling, is not meeting the standards for, very importantly, for your company. And if the answer from above, I said, all right, never mind, they're giving me the data anyway, then I'm dead. Right? I'm really dead. So you want to do this right, and you have the tools to do it right. But if the commitment from above is not solid, and is not I've been doing a few interviews recently because I'm actually finalizing my next place. And in one of the interviews, the guy was asking me, what kind of I was asking this guy, what is going to be the single action you're going to put in place personally to make this role successful? The person said, I really don't know. Then I said, okay, so I'm making things simple for you. You might be having more interviews with other people like me. So if someone else like me will ask you the same question, the answer is, I'm going to sit with you in all tough conversation you want me to sit in. And I will be, giving you air cover, because doing data is all about having tough conversation and aligning meanings. And it's a clash of culture. Remember what we were saying about culture and language? So clash of culture is painful. And if you don't have that determination, you don't get there. But going back to the governance bit, we need to move from a governance that is offline to governance that is inline. So, and now we have a chance with all the robotics, all the AI, the machine learning. We actually can use machine learning to control machine learning and to control what happens in our environment. So the governance for me is something new that has to be embedded in the way you do business, so that it's like in the Matrix. You've seen the film? So you don't perceive that you are confined in the governance, but you're moving in what it feels to you free space. But that space is actually bringing you to the natural move from you, which actually is the move that fulfills the meaning or the purpose of the governance I'm trying to implement. So if you are, instead of getting away from your process and then ticking a box somewhere in a workflow or an Excel, what happens from a governance point of view is designed within the process. It's designed within the way you do artificial intelligence. It's designed within the way you deploy sensors and you have edge computing, whatever. So if the governance, if it's not inside the process and the supply chain, it's not going to have a chance to deliver what we need. And from an AI shadow point of view, again, can you really be like it's like being the guy in Tiananmen Square with a hand in front of the tanks. So you're much better off stepping on the side and attaching on the tanks a nice tile that is giving you the positioning and the speed of the tank, and you're going to be fine. So as long as you again, centralize the knowledge, centralize the understanding of the knowledge and what is governance around your estate, will simplify the way you can look at things and control things. Because going out with an edict that say nobody will do artificial intelligence if not in this environment and with these tools, it's like squeezing gas with a colander. Sorry, I'm using too metaphor, but you can't do that, right? So there is an element of what you can do, and something that I wasn't the one talking about. My good friend Mike Hyde from Skype, and now he's in Facebook looking after their Connect. There's a tool that in Facebook. There's like a internal social media that Facebook is launching. I don't remember the name, but it's quite a new product for them. So he was saying that you need to create a conveyor belt between your experimentation and your life, lab to life, right? So you can do experiments wherever you want, whoever you want, whatever, but there are toll gates at which your degrees of freedom are restricted to a point that we can actually operationalize what you're doing. Because if you do this fantastic experiment that works only in your lab, but not in life, in real life, it's completely pointless. You're wasting time and money.
Interesting. And I think other areas sort of, I was thinking about it. And right now we know we're going through disruption in many of the technology landscape. whether you call it any data platform that you use, whether you call it any sensor that you use, whether you call it any model that you use, almost everything is going through its S-curve disruption. So there's a lot of changes happening around it. And then as a data sort of officer, you are tasked to sort of again have a very closure on the knowledge of data, what's happening, where it's happening, at least some understanding of what's going on. How do you sort of console these two sides of you? Like one side is again going very innovative, it's disruption, the platform that you're assuming that might change maybe tomorrow and maybe with next release. And on the other side, many of the technologies that you're relying on is going its own sort of shake up in its own construct. So how will you then sort of create this sort of convergence sort of data converged landscape to help business comply with these sort of privacy frameworks? We'll resume after a short break. This part of the podcast is brought to you by First Friday Fair, fastest AI-powered way to find your next opportunity. Check out the website firstfridayfair.tao.ai and find your next dream job. Let's get back to the podcast.
That's where, this is a bit of a schizophrenia that's been affecting CIOs as well in the past, right? Because you are dealing with disruption and you're dealing with legacy. In a way, instead, I'm dealing with data debt, the way I call it data debt. So it's everything bad in data that's been built over the years is the debt that I'm trying to, how do I repay this debt and at the same time invest in a new house? So how do I do that? So, and that's the most interesting thing you can do, because and that's where probably a bit of any maturity assessment that everyone is doing can help. So if you do a good assessment of what is the state of your data, and you ask the right question, you validate the questions, and you get to a good understanding of what's the maturity, right? You need to overlay, because then people don't do the second bit, which is overlaying the business strategy on that. So if this is what I am and this is what I want to become, so where is that I have to work the fastest, the most? And what is that I can actually negotiate or compromise on in terms of keeping it as is? And it is going to be evident when you're looking at this with this lens, that there are places in which you can't live with the legacy. You can't live with the way you've been doing things. You need to change. You need to bring some disruption. And one big add-on of the job of chief data officers these days is joint ventures. Because we can't do everything inside. We don't have the time to learn inside. So partnerships is something that more and more chief data officer will need to do and do well. And we're not equipped to do well. We have already too many hats to wear. And adding also the hat of a kind of a CEO of a joint venture, it's a tall order. But it's essential, because there are so many things out there that are so good and you can bring in, but you need to have the paradigms and the template to bring them in and work them well. So your data nowadays doesn't stop at your boundaries. Your data will go into, you were mentioned before, your suppliers, your vendors, your customer. You need to think about an ecosystem. In an ecosystem, you need to find the right partnerships to bolt on what you're doing and help you to mature faster. In fact, another metaphor I've been using, because I'm using a lot of metaphor, because I'm actually anchoring concepts in is, I said, I'm your data personal trainer. You tell me you want to do marathon, there is a regime for that. Business. You tell me you want to do 100 meters, there's another regime for that. So that's where you read your assessment. It's like you come, I weigh you, and I check your height, I take your blood pressure, and then you say you want to run a marathon. The way you are today, you can't run any marathon, right? So maybe you'll do an half a marathon or a quarter of a marathon, and then we think about a marathon. So, and then you will understand the areas in which you have to work first. And the same thing in AI. There are companies that today probably can't handle proper AI. Cannot, because you bring a data science team in, and this would be alien to everyone else. They will talk to people, and they will say, look what I've done. And people will say, what is this?
Right.
something I've done with random forest, and people say, I don't like to do things randomly. I like to do things properly. So there is a cultural barrier. You bring another tribe between a new tribe between the other tribes. How you connect these tribes? So
interesting.
So that's a bit the way I will approach. You need to have an assessment from a maturity point of view, and overlay the business strategy. Understand where are the gaps you need to work first, and deal with the fact that you have a debt of data that sooner or later we need to repay. You can't keep on doing projects, putting data on a side. So, this is data quality we're going to do in the BAU. Guess what? The BAU, you never do. It will never happen.
Interesting. So I think data debt is a very interesting concept, and I think and thank you for, I'll probably use it in my sort of conversation as well. Very cleverly done. So do you think that means that whenever you have debt, you have insurance somehow? So do you think that eventually data science will start seeing, or at least this insurance product especially targeted toward these cracks that you don't have access to, and you have not really gone through paying that debt yet? What's your take on that?
I don't know, frankly, because that's an all different business game. That there are a few products that I think would be very disruptive in the area of what we do, and definitely that can be one of those. For me, at present, data debt is simply an indicator. It should give me, like in projects, you have NPV or IRR. And in theory, if you do a rough calculation, at least you should know if the change you're bringing in is making your data debt bigger or smaller. Right? It's a bit like what you do with technological debt, right? But this is really about how bad is the data I've been accumulating for years. So, and in theory, any project that is about removing data that is a liability now because it's over retained should give you a lift from a data debt, because it's true. I mean, the stuff in our tables, computers, and servers and backups we really don't need. So another thing could be hire a chief destruction officer, someone who goes around and just is shredding everything doesn't need, is not needed. Right. So, yeah, it's another CDO, is the destruction officer.
That's a very clever. I like the idea, by the way. I think it's a lot of my chief data friends. They would have a chuckle with this. I think it's definitely a very clever idea. So,
but the reality is, if you over retain data, it's bad for you. It's very bad for you.
That's so. I think so. Some of the opportunities, like in your sort of engagement through this sort of privacy frameworks, what do you see are some of the big ginormous opportunities for any new entrant coming in? Like what do you see some of the holes in your deployment so far, and sort of in your understanding of the security frameworks?
Well, there is a I think one big opportunity I see from a customer point of view, and today there's an imbalance between the artificial intelligence that can, a corporation can bring to bear on data, and the intelligence that the customer has got at their fingertips. I mean, you have all the apps, and you can classify your, can find your daughters in pictures. But reality is, when you go down to privacy, I haven't got something that will tell me who am I from a digital point of view. So, because it's like the data I'm sending out is I'm all looking from the back, and it's opaque. I don't see. Once I put something on LinkedIn, I don't know it's there. Right? Once I put something on Facebook, I don't know it's there. Strangely enough, searches. Have you noticed that search tools in this social media, they're not incredibly forthcoming?
Yeah.
So you can't do proper search, can you? You wonder why. So the point is, I think there's a company that responsibly wants to, help their customers, probably will try to balance a little bit that disparity, and start to say, look, I'm also providing you with tools that will allow you to know who you are in a simple way, right? Because I would love to have something that will scan my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my whatever social media, and tells me, and I can have a mega noble that says I want to be very conservative or non very conservative, and all my settings are actually dealt consistently. That kind of thing. If you think about it, I might be, scaring early on Facebook because I'm all locked down, and then on my LinkedIn everything is public, and that's actually it's schizophrenia from a social point of view. So there's kind of there has to be some type of it's all about transparency and ethics. I think that the big miss today is think a lot about transparency and ethics, and the second big miss is think thoroughly about change and how change affects you. I think we were discussing before this that GDPR is forcing you to do privacy by design. And I think we need to move to everything by design, because the change process is inevitable, has to happen, because otherwise you die as a business. But you need to find a way to do it in a thorough way, a thorough design and a thorough business impact analysis. And again, back to your fundamental, if you have good data classification, good metadata, excellent metadata, you can do very quick business impact analysis. Hence, you can build a change that will be more sustainable, more used, more efficient. So that's the bit of change. I've been a bit paranoid about this since I started to in chief data officer kind of job, because previously it's hit me hard when I was doing IT. So I came into this job and I was the one talking about change, and everyone was looking at me, well, we're just doing projects. Why do you want to? So why? Because there's only taking one guy asking the friend in IT to add in the list of value A, B, C, the D, to destroy everything you've done in your data supply chain. And that change will fly under every radar of our process of a change approval board. So we need to, again, machine learning at volume at speed in change is important. I need to have a piece of a project brief, and I need to have an algorithm that will sniff it and say, this project will affect you there. light up in my metadata where it's going to happen some problem. So you need to get to the point.
Interesting. Wow. I think that's pretty cool. So with that, I think, Roberto, thank you so much for helping us understand this very critical component. And we're almost at the tail end of the conversation. I want to spend few minutes on your journey, and I think if you can walk us through. So in your journey, what are some of the tenets of your success? What are some of the qualities that you think are really efficient for future leaders that you have leveraged throughout your journey? That would be really efficient and really helpful for us to know.
I think the most important thing probably has been a big learning for me is don't take things personally. It's very difficult, but has to be. You want to be passionate, and it is important, but don't think that your passion is it's actually a byword for a personal thing, because your passion can be there, but then there is a dispassionate moment in which the person in front of you is not attacking you because it's you, it's attacking you because it's them. So that for me has been learning, until you don't, especially in what I do now, until you don't put yourself truly in the shoes of the person in front of you, you're not going to make a successful strategy in data. Because again, data is all. The more I study data, the more I find people. It's amazing. It's really amazing. I'm talking about a digital neo-humanism I'm talking about. So digital is actually pushing people in the foreground of the stage. And the difference between a good strategy implemented and a bad strategy implemented is how much people were with you in their hearts and minds. So if you are personal in what people are telling you, you bring change, and the first thing that a human being will do with change is no, thank you. No, thank you. And it would be too easy to say, oh, so you don't believe in what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, right? No, it's just that they don't understand, and they are not convinced that the only thing they see is pain for them, because learning new things is painful. And that's the physiology of your brain, right? That's number one. Number two, you really need to learn how to take feedback. And we always say, yeah, give me some feedback. But, it's like you say, give me some feedback. When the other person starts to talk, you switch off. So, okay, I solicit some feedback, but what you've done with that? So really, I took them quite a few kicks in my teeth in the past, and you learn that you need to see that one coming, understand really when things are going in the wrong direction from the feedback you're getting around you. You really need to sense your audience and sense when, and especially coming from a different culture is incredibly complex, because coming from an Italian culture in which we say each other exactly what we think about each other, going into a British culture in which, interesting. I mean, interesting is bad, right? or thank you very much for your thought, which means really you shouldn't have told me because I don't really care. So you need to tone these things. So understand how you get your feedback and you elicit your feedback is an art in itself. And I think that the third thing has to be, if you are not believing that you can do anything you want to do, probably you shouldn't really start in this, because I think not even the sky is the limit. I mean, there is nothing in where we're going. Nothing is really impossible. The excitement of where we are today is that this is a new phase of the human history. I truly believe that. But it's going to be down to us, and the way we will interpret this, and we'll harness the power of this big thing, which is data, which will make this an incredibly fantastic utopia or a disastrous dystopia. So we are at a junction. So we need to believe what we're doing, but we need to do it with open eyes, and sometimes look behind, because you are sitting on dwarves. You're a dwarf sitting on giant shoulder. So studying history and philosophy will help.
Wow, I think so. This would be. I think I'll get back. This is pretty cool. I think I'm still digesting a lot of karma and a lot of sort of thoughts went into this. So I think that definitely a delight, a treat. So, if one thing we ask all of our guests is to share one of their favorite read or some of the books that they have read that they would like to share with our readers and viewers, like, do you have some?
So I don't read a lot of business stuff, but a source of my inspiration for many things I've done, I have to say, is Philip K. Dick. For people that don't know him, he's only the guy that's been behind Total Recall, the Blade Runner. I mean, it's been invented, the science fiction of these days, even Minority Report. I mean, any film that is a film of a certain decency, probably it was written by originally as something written by Philip K. Dick. So I think there are a couple of those, A Scanner Darkly, and of course. Do Androids Dream About Electric Sheep, which is the basis for Blade Runner, and they were very insightful from, again, this intimate connection between the dystopian effect that that progress can bring into your life, and how human beings, being human beings for the last 500,000 years, from that point of view, our sentiments, our feelings, the way we react, our passions, not changed. I mean, you just have to watch Troy. There's been quite a good representation at BBC here of Troy. I mean, and I studied that in Greek when I was in Italy, and I realized how up to date that kind of stuff is, right? Simply because human beings are the same. So lust and passion and war and hatred, and it's all there.
Still the same, yeah.
Call it our biological phase, right? We're still in our biological. So I think I definitely Philip K. Dick would be the one I would single out in terms of inspiration. But if you want to go more on the business side, I read a book recently. It's called Team of Teams from General McChrystal. It's a guy that was basically appointed as a chief of staff for the war in Iraq, and the thought at the bottom of that is that in a world which is complex and is evolving very rapidly, you don't have time for hierarchies. So the empathic connection of multiple teams that are fulfilling the same purpose because they believe in the purpose and they can act like one brain composed by many neurons is I think the new fabric in which corporations of today will need to really work on. And for me, the learning really is that, and it's something that is written, is in the game of theory we've been using up until now to put people in competition within the same organization so we can achieve better results. It's completely vain and actually it's poisonous in our environment. So you cannot win, and your winning being predicated on someone else's losing in your company. So if I do a project, or if I sit in a project call and I'm happy if I can dish out red dots everywhere, and I'm actually, thinking I fulfill my program management role because I've been beating up people because they were bad, that's not the way a good company, data-driven, should work. I mean, everyone wins or everyone loses. You can't have your bonus because someone else has actually lost his bonus, just to put it in monetary terms. So
interesting.
It's kind of quite interesting.
Pretty cool. And so last but not the least, if you want the listeners and viewers to take away from the conversation, like what would some of the things that you would like to suggest as a closing remark for our community members?
Data is just good business. I mean, don't make it too complex or what it is. And I think the sentence I use this phrase to close a couple of conferences as Ronald Coase is a world, it's been a Nobel Prize for economy. And he was saying, torture data and he will confess to anything.
Right.
And sometimes we torture data, and because the biggest risk we run is bias.
Bias,
we
right.
need to be very, very, very aware of that.
Interesting. With that, Roberto, thank you so much for your time. I think it was a fabulous therapy session for a lot of chief data officers who are. I think there were a lot of anecdotes, there are a lot of stories, I think rarely have I sort of sat with someone who's so clear in their thinking and sort of very good at storytelling, and sort of I think I would be excited to see it go live. This would be a treat for many of folks who are sort of scratching their head around how to sort of bring this all together. So I think I do appreciate you for giving a very sort of nice perspective and overlook to that.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
I thought I was sick of home, but actually I was homesick. Never really knew that I would have to grow up so quick. I'm so uncomfortable, don't know anybody here. Just a couple dudes that I met once, that's it. And I go into the booth feeling nervous. Got butterflies in my stomach like I'm so worthless. Is the mic on? I don't know how to work this. Inside I'm breaking down, I hope I'm not up on a